The news blimp gets spied.
You wouldn't know to look at him, would you, that this was the agent that busted up Machine Gun Kelly?
I trailed that suspect down the street past that hotel, and he went upstairs, and I waited on a bench. I sat down, and I just waited until...
And then you came here.
I woke up and came right here. I think he's still there.
More spies on the news blimp.
Enough to understand about that kind of
we're
stuff.
the dummies.
I'm the dumbest guy in my country.
That's true.
And you're the dumbest guy in your country.
I'll come and live in your country.
That's
then
a
I
good
won't have to
idea.
be the dumbest guy anymore.
I'll go over to your country, too. It'll be great. Those Moscow girls really knock me out.
While the SALT talks and other aspects of détente may have brought the U.S. and the Soviet Union closer together, not everyone is pleased with the results. Among them are officials of the FBI. They say this has actually increased the number of Soviet spies working in the U.S.
We're one of you, and you're one of us, I think.
Maybe. Possibly.
Well, how do you tell? I mean, how do you know for sure? How do you ever really know?
There's only one thing I need to know. Whose side are you on? Whose side are you on?
In the mid-60s, there were 800 East Bloc and Soviet officials operating in the U.S. But as relations have thawed, that number has grown to almost 2,000. Added to that are an increased number of Soviet tourists, government business persons, and seamen from the rapidly expanding Soviet maritime fleet.
Why are you spying on me?
According to the FBI, many of these individuals are actually spies who now have greater mobility and anonymity in operating stateside than ever before. The FBI says it needs more money to deal with the increased spying threat, and they want the State Department to tighten restrictions for giving visas to East Bloc and Soviet visitors.
Oh, Moscow memories, you haunt me still. Communist memories erode my will. Giant communist frogs are devouring whole towns in the state of Florida. If you think I'm lying, when was the last time here anyone got a call from Orlando?
But the State Department says the FBI is exaggerating the threat of Soviet spies. According to the Christian Science Monitor, the State Department says the FBI may be deliberately exaggerating the situation to win a bigger budget. Congress has joined the dispute. Recently, a Senate committee stated far too many Soviet intelligence agents have been allowed in the country. The committee urged the Immigration and Naturalization Service to expel suspected spies, even if they have visas issued by the State Department. As any seasoned tourist knows, an increase in travel means an increase in travel agents.
You've got reds in your beds, there's a man looking over your shoulder.
Tom Powell on the News Blimp.
The news blimp gets a hot lunch.
What? Oh my God, you're still warm. They're covered with, thank you, this is amazing. Thank you.
X-ray food on the news blimp.
Hungry. I'm hungry. We're all hungry, so let's eat. Let's eat!
The Army has spent 25 years and $50 million trying to perfect the process of irradiating food. Basically, it involves bombarding food with radiation so that meats and produce can be kept indefinitely without refrigeration.
Ah, that baked him good.
Because I'm hungry for those good things, baby. Hungry through and through.
The Army thinks it's near to cracking the scientific problems, but the irradiated food program may be useless due to legal and economic barriers.
I can almost taste it, baby.
What do you mean, I don't like spam! Spam, 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 spam,
The Army hasn't been able to get the Food and Drug Administration's approval for irradiated meats as being safe and nutritious. The Army spent $4 million on animal studies to test the safety of irradiated meat, but they didn't monitor the tests carefully enough for the FDA, and the study was later judged unacceptable. If the Army does the tests all over again, they figure it will cost $10 million this time and take at least until 1983 to complete.
Oh, it doesn't glow in the dark?
You eat it, and you glow all the time.
Well, I guess I should eat it.
Yeah, punk. Eat it.
Oh, what should I start with?
Oh, boy, you really lay yourself open for him, don't you?
Even if the irradiated food was approved by the FDA, there's no certainty the Army would ever use it. Since food irradiation is an expensive process, the Army was hopeful the demand for the zapped food in the general public would help bring the price down.
Are you nuts?
That is just exactly what they want you to believe.
The, eggs, sir?
Let's just call them the phenomena.
There's been little interest among private food processors to join in. The FDA has approved irradiated wheat and potatoes, but there's hardly been a rush to get it on the supermarket shelves. And the Army may be forced to conclude that their X-ray food plan is only a half-baked idea.
Eat it! You bet! Eat it raw! Raw, raw, raw!
Steve Crowley on the News Blimp.
The News Blimp looks at the help that's so hard to get these days.
Where is Porgy anyway?
He's up in his room, helping Porcelain make the bed.
Oh, Porgy! Oh, my! Porgy! Porgy, Cleopatra! You're coming, Mother!
He's so good with the servants, Fred.
Domestics on the News Blimp. It seems being a domestic these days gives people an opportunity to clean up in more ways than one.
I've been working so hard.
With increasing demand and shrinking supply, being a maid is becoming a somewhat lucrative career.
The workers are much more in demand than they used to be, and the number of people willing to do this is considerably diminished.
I was thinking that maybe I'd get a maid, find a place nearby for her to stay.
Anita Shelton is director of the Household Worker Program of the National Committee on Household Employment in Washington, D.C.
Just someone to keep my house clean, fix my meals and go away.
In urban communities, household workers make $40 or $50 a day.
A man needs a maid.
Even 4 years ago, there were 2.5 million domestics in the U.S. Today, the number stands at 1.5 million. But today's household employee bridles at the term domestic or maid. Instead, Ms. Shelton says they should be referred to as household technicians.
You said all the servants had disappeared.
Did I?
What about your butler?
You mean Catherwood?
Yes, madam.
Oh, Catherwood! Oh, you startled me.
I'm sorry, madam.
In 1974, Congress brought household technicians under the minimum wage law. That entitles them to Social Security benefits, paid vacations, and a $2.65 minimum wage. But with demand as great as it is, most household technicians earn far above the minimum wage. And, according to Ms. Shelton, the household workforce is now divided half and half between black and white.
Well, I can wash out 44 pairs of socks, they have them on the line. You know, I can start you 2 dozen shirts, but you can count from 1
Nowadays, it's the employers who have to go out of their way to vie for the coveted household technicians, and the household technicians seem very happy about the sweeping change.
You have sent the maid home early like 1,000 times before. I'm a fool to do your dirty work, oh yeah. I don't want to do your dirty work no more.
Jim Reeves on the News Blimp.
The News Blimp goes to the guru.
Now this here's simple life-size replica of the Taj Mahal made entirely out of oleomargarine houses our guru, Dr. Tim. Let's knock on the door and see if he's in. Howdy, Dr. Tim.
I just thought I'd drop out and say hello. Hello.
Come back, Dr. Tim. We want to talk to you.
Oh, welcome to the link of Spirited Guhuri, LSG.
Doctors recommend meditation on the News Blimp. Meditation, not medication. That could be the rallying cry for the doctors of tomorrow.
Ready now! Meditate! 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Come on, everybody, meditate here!
A newly formed group of doctors called the American Association of Physicians Practicing Transcendental Meditation and TM Programs says meditation could play a big part in national health care.
We believe that psychosomatic problems or stress-induced problems can be relieved by the practice of TM on a continual basis. TM is the most effective tool we know of to relieve stress.
Dr. Daniel Leibowitz, a professor of medicine at Stanford University, is president of the Association of Transcendental Doctors. According to Dr. Leibowitz, the association already has 5,000 member doctors.
Doctor, oh doctor, please help me. Doctor, oh doctor, please help me.
Are you with me, doctor?
It's definitely not a religion. It's not a cult. It is a simple technique which is very effective in relieving stress.
1, 2, you there! You're not meditating!
Maharishi gave it to me, and I wonder if it set me free, and it did.
Representatives of the association have already met with the Secretary of Health, Education and Welfare to persuade him to include funds for meditation programs in any national health care plan. But Dr. Leibowitz insists the association isn't trying to do away with traditional medical help.
It is not the intent of this organization to have TM replace standard medical care. On the contrary, studies have shown that patients who do practice TM respond more rapidly and more effectively to medications, to psychotherapy.
Okay, now we're gonna do some inhaling exercises.
I don't need no doctor, because I know what's ailing me.
Dr. Leibowitz says he and the other members of the Transcendental Doctors Association already practice meditation techniques themselves, but they'd like more patients to have an opportunity to get a taste of their own medicine.
Okay, beginners, everybody into the full lotus position. Oh, yes. Oh, that's very good. Yes, that's very good. Now, you are going to stay there until you obtain true enlightenment.
Susan O'Connell on the News Blimp.
The News Blimp goes hunting.
You got me, Doc. I'm going. Everything is getting dark. I'm gonna kick the bucket.
Way! The rabbit kicked the bucket.
The rabbit kicked the bucket. The rabbit kicked the bucket.
Protecting the balance of nature on the News Blimp. A number of conservation groups are hunting ways to alter the government's wildlife management program.
Look at Mother Nature on the run in the 1970s.
The dispute involves the way the government uses hunting tax money for wildlife preservation. Conservationists charge the money is being used almost solely to build up the population of animals that will be hunted, while many other species are driven to near extinction as a result.
The children asked him if to kill was not a sin.
I mean, kill.
It looks good.
Kill.
It would have been us instead of him.
Did I just hear a shot?
Yeah, it's a funny thing. I was walking up the driveway, and my gun kind of went off accidentally, and I shot a rabbit. He was digging up your garden. Yeah.
Michael?
Yeah.
That wasn't a rabbit. That was Skippy, my dog.
Over the last few years, more and more of that money has been used for game species to the point where, say, 98% of the money is used to raise things so that they can be hunted.
Dr. John Grandy is Executive Vice President of the Defenders of Wildlife in Washington, D.C.
Spending too much of this money on what amounts to the production of game animals is causing other species of wildlife to be seriously neglected.
What's the name of the game?
From out of a cave in the north came the first buffalo. Pure white was his thick robe, and his horns and hooves were black. Nearby an Indian was gathering herbs, and to him the buffalo spoke, saying, I and my tribe will come to you and your people in great numbers. Use us well, for the day will come when we shall go back into the ground again. And when we are no more, the Indian will have gone too.
The federal government distributes hunting tax money to the states under the Pittman-Robertson Act. Some of the money is spent on altering the environment to make it more attractive to certain types of animals.
They're doing a wonderful thing there. They've got all the snakes wrapped in electrical tape to keep them from burning, right? That's really good. Yeah.
And they got sunglasses for them too, little contact lenses.
Oh, beautiful. They
Shaded.
got, all the field mice are in baggies.
According to conservationists, favoring an endangered species can have drastic effects on other creatures.
The distinction between game and non-game species is an artificial one, and the money should be used to preserve wildlife and the ecosystems on which they depend.
Things just ain't the same. Anytime the hunting gets captured by the game.
Steve Crowley on the News Blimp.
The News Blimp takes the road through the wilderness.
Isn't nature wonderful? Hey, yeah! Civilization! Oh!
Roadless Area Review on the News Blimp.
This land is yours, this land is mine. From California to the New York Island.
Will a large portion of government-owned wilderness be driven into oblivion? The U.S. Forest Service is trying to decide what to do with the 62 million acres of wilderness under its control.
Hills of forest green where the mountains touch the sky. Dream come true, I'll live there till I die.
The study of potential uses for the wilderness area is called the Roadless Area Review and Evaluation, or RARE for short. Conservationists are worried because the evaluation plan could open up millions of acres of wilderness to mining, logging, and other heavy development.
There's been a long history of controversy over the fate of the roadless lands that are owned by the federal government, owned by the public, really.
John McComb is a spokesperson for the Sierra Club, one of the conservation groups critical of the Roadless Area Review.
The motivation behind the Roadless Area Review was to expedite this decision-making process.
Nature wilderness. I cut down trees. Wow! You cut down my green trees.
Under the review, the Forest Service would place the 62 million acres in 3 separate categories: land that should remain wilderness, land whose use may be decided upon later, and land that should be open for immediate development.
And then we have land. This land is your land. This land is my land. But mostly, this land is my land.
Just for a weekend of fun out on the wilderness trail.
Perhaps most offensive to environmentalists is a quota system the Wilderness Review uses for deciding what's expendable. The Forest Service is designating 104 kinds of ecosystems and 24 landforms. Only one or two of each kind of ecosystem or landform would be granted protected status. In other words, a forest in one state could be cut down because there was a similar one somewhere else.
It's nature's way of telling you, dying trees.
If the Forest Service gets its way, many conservationists fear the nation's roadless areas could be on the road to ruin.
This land was made for you and me.
Tom Powell on the News Blimp.
The News Blimp gets double vision.
Oh my goodness. What's happening? Am I seeing double? There's two of everybody except me. Pandemonium was breaking out all around me. Wait a minute. Who are you? I was here first. You imposter. Take that.
Schizophrenia on the News Blimp. Schizophrenia has long been one of the most puzzling mental disorders. But that may be because many doctors and psychiatrists now believe schizophrenia is a variety of mental diseases. Besides other facts being discovered about the disorder, a 15-year study just concluded indicates a greater proportion of schizophrenics are born in late winter and early spring.
Excessive number of schizophrenics, more than one would expect by chance, are born during certain seasons of the year.
I got spring fever, and they say that it can go to your head. Well, I think I'm going out of my head.
Dr. Dennis Kinney is a lecturer in Harvard University's Department of Psychiatry.
Not only has it been found in several countries in Europe and in the United States, but also in the Southern Hemisphere, although here one finds that the excess of births tends to occur about 6 months later, as one would expect because, of course, the seasons there are reversed in the Southern Hemisphere.
I've lived in apartments, I've lived in a home. I've traveled in trailers when I used to roam. But now in these places you won't catch me dead, because I'm happy I live in a split-level head.
Man, the chick is twisted, crazy, whoop-shooby, here, flip city.
And their time means nothing, I like care less. I don't rush the buses, I lanes are a mess. Then my odds are yellow, or I don't ever bet, because I'm happy I live in a split-level head.
Schizophrenia, marked by hallucinations, delusions, and incoherency, strikes about 1 person in 100. But about 10% more sufferers have late winter or early spring birth dates. However, Dr. Kinney stresses the increase is no reason for anyone to avoid having a baby in these months.
I want to emphasize very strongly that the increased risk to the average person contemplating what time of the year should we plan on conceiving a child would be so small, it would not be a practical concern.
Ooh, anytime that you want me, anytime at all.
The 15-year study examined schizophrenics who were adopted at birth to see if the disorder is linked to hereditary or environmental factors. The results indicate the disease is more genetic than environmental. But even if scientists were unanimous about the whys and wherefores of the disorder, in regards to schizophrenia, it would still be a split decision.
My analyst told me that I was right out of my head, the way he described it. He said I'd be better dead than live, because instead of one head, I got two. And you know, two heads are better than one.
Jim Reeves on the News Blimp.
The News Blimp believes in the free press.
It's not fit to print?
No, it's not fit to print because it's a secret. Now, you don't print a secret, you keep it a secret.
You mean once it's printed, it's no secret?
Right, if it was no secret, then we could print it.
Well, how important must it be to be printed?
So important that we have to print it even though it's a secret.
It's very important.
How important?
It's fit to print.
Censorship at the UN, on the News Blimp.
Good evening, one and all. This is Channel 24, bringing you the latest news around the world.
In the United States, most people feel the press is one industry that doesn't need government controls, but that's not the case throughout the rest of the world.
I got good news.
UNESCO, the United Nations educational, scientific, and cultural organization, recently reached a compromise on a controversial proposal that would have given UN approval to government press censorship. The proposal, sponsored by the Soviet Union and a coalition of third world countries, had created bitter debate for the past 2 years.
I'd like to have an argument, please.
Certainly, sir.
Now up jumped the U.S. representative. He's the one with the tired eyes, flying back from a peacekeeper mission. And so it goes, and so it goes, and so it goes, and so it goes. But where it's going, no one knows. And so it goes, and so it goes.
Third world countries say the Western press is biased against them and only prints negative stories and features about their countries. The third world countries and the Soviet Union proposed a document giving approval of press censorship to correct the flaws that they perceive in Western reporting.
Hi there, sports fans. It's a beautiful, clear, sunshiny afternoon here on the Mekong River Delta, where elements of the 101st Airborne Division tangle with North Vietnam's crack 7th Regiment.
I can hear the morning crier yelling, read all about it, here's the truth.
Western countries were horrified at the thought of approving censorship, especially the United States, which pays 1/4 of the UNESCO operating budget.
I'm gonna take my problem to the United Nations.
After 2 years of heated discussions, a compromise has been reached.
This document endorsed the principle of a free press. Now, on the other hand, it also spoke of the moral and political obligations of a press.
Jay Axelbank is spokesperson for the 20th Century Fund, a nonprofit organization that monitors press issues.
Listen, do you want to know a secret?
Third world countries, which are in the grips of authoritarian regimes, feel that in order to achieve economic progress or social justice, they must censor the press.
If you don't print it because it's not fit to print, somebody else will print it to make it fit to print, and you'll lose the news.
Let me see the papers.
Here are the papers.
Extra, extra, read all about it. Hiding from a scandal in the national press.
Considering the awesome power of a free press, the fact that many governments would like to be able to control it shouldn't be news to anyone.
Give me some news I can use. Let me smile for a while, for the madness is taking its toll.
Produced by Mark Berman. I'm Steve Crowley.
You're under arrest!
Steve Crowley on the News Blimp.
The News Blimp heads for the shore.
Now let's go to the river's edge and Charles B. Smith.
Ed, it's an amazing scene here. Like lemmings, the crowds are waiting on the shore, torches blazing as the long line of shrouded funeral rafts drift lazily into view.
On the News Blimp. Sandcastles wash out to sea. Unfortunately, some adults are finding the same thing can happen to real homes when they're built too near the water. So federal, state, and local governments are belatedly trying to manage development of the nation's coastline.
Trouble on the waterfront, evil in the air.
Many coastline areas are overdeveloped, and this overdevelopment can actually speed up the process of coastal erosion. Bob Grover is Chief Environmental Scientist for Greenman Peterson Associates, a New York company that develops coastal management plans.
The erosion rate is most definitely increasing, and we can measure the rate at which it increases, and it correlates very well with the rate at which the shoreline is being developed. The erosion problem is really critical all over the United States.
California tumbles
what you write in your book.
Yeah, here it is. It's about ecology. And it's called Eat Dirt.
Ecology, I'm so interested in that. Well, what is it?
But overdevelopment of the shore isn't the only reason beaches are eroding. According to scientists, coastlines around the world are eroding due to natural forces.
Oh, naturally?
Yes, even supernaturally. Yeah.
Oh, weird.
For those whose homes are endangered by eroding coastlines, there are a few options open. They can move their homes back or have sand piled on their beach every year. But according to environmental engineers, the best solution is to establish effective controls for coastal management so structures aren't built along unstable shores in the first place.
It's a losing battle if people are going to constantly insist upon having permanent structures very close to the ocean. That's a losing battle. It's not a losing battle if you want to take a priceless natural treasure, which our seashores and barrier islands are, and manage them for future generations as recreational resources and areas for nature study. It's certainly not a losing battle in that sense.
Once a man had so much space, room to move around. Now you know it's like a race to find a piece of ground.
Susan O'Connell on the News Blimp.
The News Blimp goes to the doctor.
And now, a pause in the busy day's activity. As the doctor leaves his little rectory, walks out the marble path covered with Aggies, cat's eyes from his youth. Yes, it's Dr. Whiplash. And he's come again to the font of perpetual resurrection to answer some of your questions.
Doctors and advertising on the News Blimp.
Oh, help me, please, doctor, I'm damaged.
According to the Hippocratic Oath, doctors are supposed to alleviate suffering.
I don't know. He looks pretty sick to me.
But a Federal Trade Commission judge has just accused the American Medical Association with actually injuring the public by restraining competition among doctors.
According to my careful prosthesis, this man has the plague.
The FTC judge says the AMA's ban on advertising has kept doctors' fees at their high level and stifled alternate kinds of healthcare programs that pose a threat to physicians in private practice.
I'll answer any questions, dear friends. Just write me if you still have the strength. Until next week, this is Dr. Whiplash. I'm out for lunch.
Said that a week in bed would suddenly do the trick.
The AMA is also charged with keeping information from the public that could help individuals make informed choices about health care.
By and large, consumers don't have that sort of information in the healthcare area, and the American Medical Association effectively prohibited doctors from advertising and thereby prevented them from conveying useful information to the public.
Alan Palmer is Deputy Director of the FTC's Bureau of Competition.
You, doctor? Me, doctor. You, Mr. Burtonshaw, she, sister.
But my wife, nurse.
Your wife not nurse, she nurse, your wife patient.
The FTC judge ordered the AMA to permit doctors to advertise, but the decision has to be approved by the FTC, and the AMA has vowed to fight any attempts to allow advertising. The AMA claims advertising would open the way for fraud and deception among doctors who would use unscrupulous ads to recruit patients.
The old doctor can help you out.
Right this way.
Hey, get your hands off me. I don't want to leave.
Then roll up your arm and bend over.
I got the fever. You got to kill me.
But according to the FTC Bureau of Competition, advertising would help consumers by giving them more information about health services and would also lower the price of those services.
They will be able to exercise the kind of informed judgment that is going to make it more difficult for a seller, in this case a doctor, to keep his prices high. And therefore, the overall tendency of the decision, if upheld, Should, according to the theory of the complaint, be to reduce the cost of medical care to the consuming public.
With health costs rocketing, the FTC feels ads might be part of the cure, even if it's not just what the doctors ordered.
Time's up! You're cured!
I am?
Correct! $20,000, please.
Tom Powell
In small bills, eh?
on the News Blimp.
The News Blimp looks for apartments that don't ban children.
I'm sick up and fed with these three little pigs. All they do all day is run around the house and make noise, and they never clean up their room or blow their nose. So I got an idea. Tomorrow, when the three little pigs go to school, let's move.
On the News Blimp. The pitter-patter of little feet may not be quite as appealing as it used to be. At least that's what current housing trends indicate. A recent survey has revealed many communities simply don't want kids.
At this point, his father turned to him and said the three words he was never for to get.
Ye brats, for treats, strike for toys.
Which means,
beat it, go away, get it.
Zoning laws in certain California and Arizona towns prohibit residents under 18 years of age and require each home to have at least one resident over 50.
The longer a man is with us, the more valuable he becomes.
To many, the no kids trend seems to be a clear-cut case of age discrimination. Opponents of age restriction are beginning to take a firm stand, and now it seems the two factions will end up meeting in court.
But tell me, where do the children play?
The Arizona law, passed in 1975, states a community can evict children or grandparents who might become guardians of minor children. Proponents of the law feel they've raised their kids, and now they want some peace and quiet and freedom from child-related problems.
And the way you live, all together in communes, eating together, sleeping together, shameful, it's uncivilized.
Right on.
You ought to live like us old people do in a boarding house. And the idea of getting married when you're 18, 19 years old? Foolishness! You should wait till you're old and have children of your own.
Unfortunately, couples with children are having a hard time finding a place to live. The average cost of a home has more than doubled in the past 8 years, but the overwhelming majority of apartments will not accept kids.
The tenants arrive here in the entrance hall, are carried along the corridor on a conveyor belt in extreme comfort, past murals depicting Mediterranean scenes, towards the rotating knives. The last 20 feet of the corridor are heavily soundproofed.
Are you all proposing to slaughter our tenants?
I hadn't fully divined your attitude towards the tenants.
Kids, I don't know what's wrong with these kids today. Kids, who can understand anything they say?
The popularity of the child-free communities makes the message clear. Kids may be nice to visit, but an awful lot of people wouldn't want to live near them.
And if that's what you have in mind, yeah, if that's what you're all about, good luck moving up, 'cause I'm moving out.
Steve Crowley on the News Blimp.
The News Blimp has a bone burger.
Be some weird folks out here next weekend. Cause there's a lot of people hooked to beef. Yeah, a lot of people hooked to beef like drug addicts hooked to dope. Yeah, it's beef addicts. Yeah, you laughing now, but next week you walk down the street, see them laying in the gutter, shaking, hollering, moo, moo.
Crunchy meat on the News Blimp. The Department of Agriculture has just thrown a bone to the meat processing industry by allowing them to sell ground-up bones to consumers. Meat processors are now allowed to include finely ground bone in frankfurters, salamis, sausages, and canned meat sauce.
Well, don't you even take the bones out? If we took the bones out, it wouldn't be crunchy, would it? Superintendent Parrot ate one of those. Will you excuse me for a minute?
The Department of Agriculture's ruling lets meat packers and processors grind up neck bones and other parts of the animal that are hard to trim by hand. The meat and bone mixture is then strained to eliminate any bone particles larger than the size of a grain of pepper. And under the new rules, the ground meat and bone mix may make up to 20% of the product.
And we serve the bones to Henry Jones, 'cause Henry don't eat no meat.
Just keep on eating this stuff and you'll be healthy, also regular.
Oh, naturally?
Yes, even supernaturally. Yeah.
For 2 years, consumer groups have battled to keep ground bones out of meat products. But according to Agriculture Department officials, all the crunchy meat products will carry notices that they contain ground bones, and the bones will be banned from use in baby foods.
Hey, Mom, too tired to cook? Why not take the kids to Mr. Veal Chop City for a bucket of Mr. Veal's great chops and a side order of the special lima beans?
It ain't the meat, it's the motion, it's the movement that gives it the size.
Officially, the crunchy meat will be known as mechanically processed beef product or mechanically processed pork product.
Not zucchini, fettuccine, bulgur wheat, but a big warm bun and a huge hunk of meat. Cheeseburger in paradise, heaven on earth with an onion slice. Not too particular, not too precise, I'm just a cheeseburger in paradise.
There's still heated debate between consumer groups and the meat industry over the advisability of adding the calcium chips to meat. And this new ruling is likely to remain a bone of contention for some time.
You've got right enough dishing out what you say, waggling your piece of meat.
Jim Reeves on the News Blimp.